Hey everybody, welcome back to the Neighborhood Book Club. I'm so glad that you can join us. You've come just in time. We're just about to open up our new book. Holes by Louis Sachar. I hope you're able to pick up a copy for yourself. Perhaps you have one lying around. If not, don't worry. You can borrow mine. Holes is a favorite that has been around for a long time. An absolute classic. One of my favorites, and I hope it's one of yours. So when we left off, just the other day, we found out that it was Madame Zaroni who cast the spell on Elia Yelnuts. For he wanted to marry a beautiful girl. However, the father wanted something in exchange. A nice, big, fat, suckling pig. So there was a deal made between Elia and Madame Zaroni. What do you say we pick off where we left and find out what happens next? I'm not exactly sure what's gonna happen. Here we go. All right, I'm just trying to find our page here. All right, here we go. We'll start a little bit where we went off. Is that right? We're on page 31. Hope you're following along at home. So where we pick off is Elia is a bit skeptical. Madame Zeroni is telling him the deal. All you gotta do is carry this pig up the mountain, and you will be able to marry your beautiful woman. Here we go. If it is that big and fat, asked Elia, how will I be able to carry it up the mountain? The piglet is not too heavy for you now, is it? Asked Madame Zeroni. Of course not, said Elia. Do you think it will be too heavy for you tomorrow? No. Every day that you carry the pig up the mountain, it will get a little bit bigger, and you will get a little bit stronger. After you give the pig to Mara's father, I want you to do one more thing for me. Anything, said Elia. I want you to carry me up the mountain. I want to drink from the stream. I want you to sing the song to me. Elia promised he would. Madame Zeroni warned that if he failed to do this, he and his descendants would be doomed for all eternity. At the time, Elia thought nothing of the curse. He was just a 15-year-old kid, and eternity didn't seem much longer than a week from Tuesday. Besides, he liked Madame Zeroni and would be glad to carry her up the mountain. He would have done it right then and there, but he wasn't yet strong enough. Stanley was still digging. His hole was about 3 feet deep, but only in the center. It sloped upwards to the edges. The sun had only just come up over the horizon, but he could already feel its hot rays against his face. As he reached down to pick up his canteen, he felt a sudden rush of dizziness and put his hands on his knees to steady himself. For a moment, he was afraid he would throw up, but the moment passed. He drank the last drop of water from his canteen. He had blisters on every one of his fingers, and one in the center of each palm. Everyone else's hole was a lot deeper than his. He couldn't actually see their holes, but he could tell by the size of the dirt piles. He saw a cloud of dust moving across the wasteland, and noticed that the other boys had stopped digging and were washing it too. The dirt cloud moved closer, and he could see that it trailed behind a red pickup truck. The truck stopped near where they were digging, and the boys lined up, X-ray in front, Zero at the rear. Stanley got in line behind Zero. Mr. Sir filled each of their canteens from the tank of water in the bed of the pickup. As he took Stanley's canteen from him, he said, "This isn't the Girl Scouts, is it?" Stanley raised and lowered one shoulder. Mr. Sir followed Stanley back to his hole to see how he was doing. "You'd better get with it," he said, "or else you're going to be digging in the hottest part of the day." He popped some sunflower seeds into his mouth, deftly removed the shells with his teeth, and spat them into Stanley's hole. Every day, Elia carried a little piglet up the mountain and sang to it as it drank from the stream. As the pig grew fatter, Elia grew stronger. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, Elia's pig weighed over 50 stones. Madame Zeroni had told him to carry the pig up the mountain on that day as well. But Elia didn't want to present himself to Myra smelling like a pig. Instead, he took a bath. It was his second bath in less than a week. Then he led the pig to Myra's. Igor Barkov was there with his pig as well. "These are two of the finest pigs I've ever seen," Myra's father declared. He was also impressed with Elia, who seemed to have grown bigger and stronger in the last 2 months. "I used to think you were a good-for-nothing book reader," he said. "But now I can see you could be an excellent mud wrestler." "May I marry your daughter?" Elia boldly asked. "First, I must weigh the pigs." Alas, poor Elia should have carried his pig up the mountain one last time. The 2 pigs weighed exactly the same. Stanley's blisters had ripped open, and new blisters formed. He kept changing his grip on the shovel to try to avoid the pain. Finally, he removed his cap and held it between the shaft of his shovel and his raw hands. This helped, but digging was harder because the cap would slip and slide. The sun beat down on his unprotected head and neck. Though he tried to convince himself otherwise, he'd been aware for a while that his piles of dirt were too close to his hole. The piles were outside of his 5-foot circle, but he could see he was going to run out of room. Still, he pretended otherwise and kept adding more dirt to the piles that he would eventually have to move. The problem was that when the dirt was in the ground, it was compact. It expanded when it was excavated. The piles were a lot bigger than his hole was, deep. It was either now or later. Reluctantly, he climbed up out of his hole, and once again dug his shovel into the previously dug dirt. Myra's father got down on his hands and knees and closely examined each pig, tail to snout. "These are the 2 of the finest pigs I have ever seen," he said at last. "How am I to decide? I only have one daughter." "Why not let Myra decide?" suggested Elia. "That's preposterous," exclaimed Igor, expelling saliva as he spoke. "Myra is just an empty-headed girl," said her father. "How can she possibly decide when I, her father, can't?" "She knows how she feels in her heart," said Elia. Myra's father rubbed his chin. Then he laughed and said, "Why not?" He slapped Elia on the back. "It doesn't matter to me. A pig is a pig." He summoned his daughter. Elia blushed when Myra entered the room. "Good afternoon, Myra," he said. She looked at him. "You're Elia, right?" she asked. "Myra," said her father, "Elia and Igor have each offered a pig for your hand in marriage. It doesn't matter to me. A pig is a pig, so I will let you make the choice. Whom do you wish to marry?" Myra looked confused. You want me to decide? That's right, my blossom, said her father. Gee, I don't know, said Myra. Which pig weighs more? They both weigh the same, said her father. Golly, said Myra. I guess I choose Elia. No, Igor. No, Elia. No, Igor. Oh, I know. I think of a number between 1 and 10. I'll marry whoever guesses the closest number. Okay, I'm ready. 10, guessed Igor. Elia said nothing. Elia? Said Myra. What number do you guess? Elia didn't pick a number. Marry Igor, he muttered. You can keep my pig as a wedding present. The next time the water truck came, it was driven by Mr. Pendanski, who also brought sack lunches. Stanley sat with his back against a pile of dirt and ate. He had a bologna sandwich, potato chips, and a large chocolate chip cookie. How you doing? Asked Magnet. Not real good, said Stanley. Well, the first hole's the hardest, Magnet said. Stanley took a long, deep breath. He couldn't afford to dawdle. He was way behind the others, and the sun just kept getting hotter. It wasn't even noon yet, but he didn't know if he had the strength to stand up. He thought about quitting. He wondered what they would do to him. What could they do to him? His clothes were soaked with sweat. In school, he had learned that sweating was good for you. It was nature's way of keeping you cool. So why was he so hot? Using his shovel for support, he managed to get up on his feet. Where are we supposed to go to the bathroom? He asked Magnet. Magnet gestured with his arms to the great expanse around them. Pick a hole, any hole, he said. Stanley staggered across the lake, almost falling over a dirt pile. Behind him, he heard Magnet say, "But first, make sure nothing's living in it." After leaving Myra's house, Elia wandered aimlessly through the town until he found himself down by the wharf. He sat on the edge of a pier and stared down into the cold, black water. He could not understand how Myra had trouble deciding between him and Igor. He thought she loved him. Even if she didn't love him, couldn't she see what a foul person Igor was? It was like Madame Zeroni had said. Her head was as empty as a flower pot. Some men were gathering on another dock, and he went to see what was going on. A sign read, "Deck hands wanted. Free passage to America." He had no sailing experience, but the ship's captain signed him aboard. The captain could see that Elia was a man of great strength. Not everybody could carry a full-grown pig up the side of a mountain. It wasn't until the ship had cleared the harbor and was heading out across the Atlantic that he suddenly remembered his promise to carry Madame Zeroni up the mountain. He felt terrible. He wasn't afraid of the curse. He thought that was a lot of nonsense. He felt bad because he knew Madame Zeroni had wanted to drink from the stream before she died. Zero was the smallest kid in Group D. He was the first one to finish digging. "You're finished?" Stanley asked enviously. Zero said nothing. Stanley walked to Zero's hole and watched him measure it with his shovel. The top of his hole was a perfect circle. The sides were smooth and steep. Not one dirt clod more necessary had been removed from the earth. Zero pulled himself up to the surface. He didn't even smile. He looked down at his perfectly dug hole, spat in it, and turned and headed back to the campground. "Zero's one weird dude," said Zigzag. Stanley would have laughed, but he didn't have the strength. Zigzag had to be the weirdest dude Stanley had ever seen. He had a long, skinny neck and a big round head with wild, frizzy blonde hair that struck out in all directions. His head seemed to bob up and down on his neck, like it was on a spring. Armpit was the second one to finish digging. He also spat into the hole before heading back to the campground. One by one, Stanley watched each of the boys spit into the hole and return to the campground. Stanley kept digging. His hole was almost to his shoulders, although it was hard to tell exactly where ground level was, because his dirt piles completely surrounded the hole. The deeper he got, the harder it was to raise the dirt up out of the hole. Once again, he realized he was going to have to move the piles. His cap was stained with blood from his hands. He felt like he was digging his own grave. In America, Elia learned to speak English. He fell in love with a woman named Sarah Miller. She could push a plow, milk a goat, and most importantly, think for herself. She and Elia often stayed up half the night talking and laughing together. Their life was not easy. Elia worked hard. But bad luck seemed to follow him everywhere. He always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He remembered Madame Zeroni telling him that she had a son in America. Elia was forever looking for him. He'd walk up to complete strangers and ask if they knew someone named Zeroni, or had ever heard of anyone named Zeroni. No one did. Elia wasn't sure what he'd do if he ever found Madame Zeroni's son anyway. Carry him up a mountain, sing the pig lullaby to him? After his barn was struck by lightning for the third time, he told Sarah about his broken promise to Madame Zeroni. "I'm worse than a pig thief," he said. "You should leave me and find someone who isn't cursed." "I'm not going to leave you," said Sarah. But I want you to do one thing for me. Anything, said Elia. Sarah smiled. Sing me the pig lullaby. He sang it for her. Her eyes sparkled. That's so pretty. What does it mean? Elia tried his best to translate it from Latvian to English. But it wasn't the same. It rhymes in Latvian. He told her. I could tell, said Sarah. A year later, their child was born. Sarah named him Stanley, because she noticed that Stanley was Yelnuts spelled backwards. Sarah changed the words of the pig lullaby so that they rhymed, and every night she sang it to little Stanley. If only the woodpecker sighs, the bark on the tree was as soft as the skies, while the wolf waits below, hungry and lonely, crying to the moon, if only, if only. Stanley's hole was as deep as his shovel, but not quite wide enough on the bottom. He grimaced at the slice off of a trunk of dirt, then raised it up and flung it into a pile. He laid his shovel back down on the bottom of his hole, and to his surprise, it fit. He rotated it and only had to chip off a few chunks of dirt before it could lie flat across his hole in every direction. He heard the water truck approaching and felt a strange sense of pride at being able to show Mr. Sir and Mr. Pendanski that he had dug his first hole. He put his hands on the rim and tried to pull himself up. He couldn't do it. His arms were too weak to lift his heavy body. He used his legs to help, but he just didn't have any strength. He was trapped inside his hole. It was almost funny, but he wasn't in the mood to laugh. Stanley! He heard Mr. Pendanski call. Using his shovel, he dug 2 footholes in the hole wall. He climbed out to see Mr. Pendanski walking over to him. I was afraid you'd fainted, Mr. Pendanski said. You wouldn't have been the first. I'm finished, Stanley said, putting his blood-spotted cap back on his head. All right, said Mr. Pendanski, raising his hand for a high five, but Stanley ignored it. He didn't have the strength. Mr. Pendanski lowered his hand and looked down at Stanley's hole. Well done, he said. You want to ride back? Stanley shook his head. I'll walk. Mr. Pendanski climbed back into the truck without filling Stanley's canteen. Stanley waited for him to drive away, then took another look at his hole. He knew it was nothing to be proud of, but he felt proud nonetheless. He sucked up his last bit of saliva and spat. And that was our episode for today of Holes by Louis Sachar. Don't forget, you can always join us in the discussions on Facebook or Twitch TV or maybe even YouTube. And if you're in the neighborhood, you can join us on nextdoor.com. If you don't have a neighborhood book club and would like one, you make sure to give me a call or give me a little message. We'll surely set that up for you, because every neighborhood should have a neighborhood book club. Until next time, I'll see you guys